You've seen AEVYTV's insane setup, that giant background LED wall that costs over 20 lakhs and makes every frame look like a Netflix documentary. But here's the twist, I recreated almost the same look for 0 rupees using nothing but a cheap green screen. And trust me, I have been inside the studio. That setup is absolutely no joke. Don't trust me? Here's an actual screenshot of the quote. It really does cost over 20 lakhs, trust me guys. I followed a dozen tutorials, copied every step, but the results always felt flat and unsatisfying. Therefore, I scrapped everything, started from scratch, and that's when I finally cracked the version that actually works. And today, I will show you exactly how I built this entire setup right inside my home. No studio, no fancy gear, just a smart, repeatable method anyone on the internet can pull off. To pull this look, your setup matters way more than the gear. And that's exactly why this works. First, I wanted to show you the camera setup. So I'm using a Sony ZV-E1 paired with a Tamron 20-75 at 75mm lens. I will also show you the camera settings. So we are shooting 4K 10-bit. I will just show you the settings, and movie settings we are using 30 frames per second. So this is NTSC, not PAL, and recording at 140 Mbps, 422 and 10-bit. We shoot at 10-bit because it gives us more data to work with later on. It's totally optional. If you don't have that option, you can also do like an 8-bit. It's negligible difference. We shoot in log, so we shoot in S-Log 3. It gives us better control over colors later on. As you can see on the screen right now, this is how it looks. We also use a teleprompter to speed up things. Totally optional, but you can get a teleprompter if you want. Now let's discuss the setup. It looks a little overwhelming, but trust me, there are a lot of things you can actually skip in this if you are a beginner. So the first light that we're using is a ProLight PL 125 watt. These are very budget bicolor lights, and this is with a good aux softbox with honeycomb mesh. So something that's very important is to ensure that wherever the subject is sitting, the light is at least 45-degree angle and from the top. So the face is very well lit. This is a very simple budget oriented Amazon basics, I think, table that I got. And this is again a budget mic, Meono. None of this actually is more important as the lighting setup. See, one of the things that's very important is to have enough depth. The more distance you have between the camera, the subject and the green screen, the better it is. I know we're in India, we don't have a lot of space, but I tried to do it with as minimum space as possible. So this is not very long, but this is what the setup kind of looks like. Talking about the second most important light is another bicolor LED light. You can use a simple light. For example, as you can see on the other side, I've used just a simple cheap light to light the green screen. Now it's very important. The green screens are very tricky to work with. And you have to ensure that the light is kind of very evened out, especially around the subject. For example, whenever I'm sitting here, I've ensured that I have another light. I think this is quite important. Even if you skip all the setup, this is quite important. The green screen around the subject has to be even well lit. Now it's low battery, so I can't show you how it's actually lit here, but this is quite important. I use this RGB light as a rim light. As you can see in the final background, it kind of gives that immersive look that the table lamp in the AI generated background is the one that's lighting the scene, so it makes it more realistic. There's a blue light in here, so this is again optional. This is what I just added today. The last shot that I showed on Twitter didn't have this. Okay, before we move forward, ensure that the green screen does not have any sort of crease. It's a little hard to control. The tighter lens you have, which is like 75, 85, the less you can see all this cracks and creases on the camera. You will see there are a couple of stitch marks here, but since the camera is like very far off, you can't see all of this stuff. So yeah, that's kind of the setup. It's pretty simple, very minimalistic. You can get started with just 2 lights if you don't have the budget. That's how I pulled it with just 500 rupees screen. The setup gives you the foundation, but the real magic happens when we take this footage inside DaVinci. So let's talk about post-production and why I'm doing this inside DaVinci instead of Premiere Pro or After Effects. Premiere's keying is decent, After Effects key light is good, but DaVinci's keyer is on a completely different level. Cleaner edges, better spill suppression, and far more control when your green screen isn't perfect.
The first thing that we're gonna do is color grade the footage. So I will bring the footage inside of DaVinci Resolve. First, I would change the frame rate, go to the edit panel, and then drop our footage. As you can see, this is recorded in S-Log 3, so it looks quite flat. To change from S-Log 3 to Rec 709, we would simply go to the color panel and add a node. We will add a serial node. Don't worry, this is not going to be complicated because I'm also extremely new in DaVinci. So I am as experienced as you are. So I will hold Shift and space bar to add an effect. So I will search for color space transform. Then I will click on effects. This will open this pop up. Under color space transform, we will be changing this to Sony S Gamma 3, not CNN. Input gamma to Sony S Log 3, and then output color space to Rec 709, and output gamma to again Rec 709. So this is how it's going to look like. We can do a couple of adjustments. For example, we can boost the offset, increase the gain. If we don't like the color temperature, we can also scroll ahead and see whatever suits for us. For example, we can push the lift, work with the color temperature. Right now, we don't care much about the green around the subject. What we really care about is our subject to be well lit. As you can see, there will be certain green cast, but don't worry. I found a great way to fix all of these things.
And if you love this kind of stuff, we are building something special. A community of AI ready editors and creators. Mastering these tools together. We are already 10,000 members strong, sharing workflows, breakdowns, and the kind of insider tricks every editor will need to know in 2026. You can scan the QR code on the screen right now to join. It's completely free, but not for very long.
Once we're done with the color grade, we will come back to the edit tab and I will right click on this to a new compound click. So I will, let's say color graded, and then comes the next step, which is the keying the green screen. So for that, I will go to the fusion tab. For the green screen keying, first we would highlight the media input 1, then shift spacebar and search for something called delta keyer. Now we will drag this into the first source window. As you can see, it actually tells us delta keyer 1 is on the left screen and media output 1 is on the right screen. Now this is an approach that has worked really well for us, where we will change this to alpha preview, and this would be our media output. Now if you have no idea about how alpha channels work, white is what's visible and black is what's not visible, you will understand what we're talking about very soon. So then we will click on the inspector panel, go to key, and then we will select the background color. We would use the eyedropper tool and select a green that's very close to the subject. This ensures that the color keying is as accurate as possible. So I will select something like this. As you can see, as we said, whatever is black is getting keyed out and whatever is white is keyed in. Now this is nowhere perfect, and this is where the magic of DaVinci comes. We have a lot of controls in here. So the main sliders that we're going to use from the key part are the gain and the balance. So let's see what happens when we increase the gain. As you can see, as we increase the grain, it's getting quite dark. But the problem is we also start to lose some of the subject here. Now this doesn't need to be absolutely perfect, but once we hit a sweet spot, we would be doing the opposite thing using the balance slider. As you can see, this is going to take away all of the information. Now don't worry about this corners because we would be masking this later on. You can also hold control if you want finer controls. In our footage, we don't really need this one because if you have seen, let me just change it back to media input and change it back to this. You can see our green screen is very well lit and there are no creases. So this is something very important. Try your best to ensure that your green screen has no creases, but if it does, we still don't have any problem. If you have creases like this, for example, this doesn't look perfect, we will go to the pre-mat and we will just select the area. You can see it's getting keyed out, but as you start keying out, you will start to introduce more of the subject here also. Once you're satisfied with the finer details, you can even use the soft range slider to make it even more sharp or lesser sharp. We can even control the erode slider. That works literally the opposite way. And we can also do the blur to soften the edges out. Although I am not going to use it because as you can see, it's pretty good for us. If you have rough edges, this is something you must take care of. So the next step is going back to the matte panel. Here we are going to increase the low point so that it crushes out even more. As you can see, it's getting crushed, but also we're losing some details right here. The more you make the threshold close to each other, the more sharp it's going to be. Now this is a pretty well lit green screen, so I don't need to mess it up a lot because we are going to anyway key out this part using something called B-spline. Once you're quite happy with your key, we are going to crop it out. for masking out the light, we are going to use something called the polygon. So you can see this is the polygon and you can simply drag it here. So once we have a polygon node, we are just going to simply drag this to the delta key here. This will pop up a option window and we will select garbage matte. Then we can simply go and mask the part that we absolutely do not need. Now we have a perfect key, but let's go even a step further to make sure everything is perfect. If you zoom around this, you will see there's certain haloing happening. To control this, we will select the delta key again, go to matte and use the erode slider to erode a little bit. Now this is a very sensitive setting. So to have finer controls, hold control and then slowly push a little bit. And if your erode comes out too sharp, we can introduce a little bit of blur into this. And then it'll just probably be good for now. So the next thing that we fix is all of this green spills right here. As you can see, there will be certain spills that you really can't control even during the production. So what we're gonna do is go to fringe, change our spill method from usually the best result that I've got is between medium and well done. I'll go and do medium and then use the spill suppression slider. As you can see, it's not doing a lot. So probably I will go and use well done. As you can see, it's kind of gone right now. So once we're done with the keying part, we will go back to the edit page again. Then we would go back to effects, go to generators, and then we will drag solid colors. And in here, we will select, we would go here, select a green. Yeah, we would select a very balanced white green because we need to generate the background out of this. Next, what we're going to do is export this frame for generation. We will go to file, export current frame as still and save it something. As you can see that we have this photo in here. Next step in the process is to generate the background, and the way I do it is a little different from the way others did it. That is what made it really coherent. So for generating the background, first we would use nanobanana, and I personally use Higgsfill for it because it gives me access to all of the models. This video is not sponsored by them. This is something that we literally use, as you can see, every single day. So I will select nanobanana and then upload this green screen, select unlimited, auto is fine, although you can do a 16:9. After this, I would give it a very detailed JSON prompt. Don't worry, I will paste the entire prompt below so you don't have to worry about it at all. So I will hit it 3 times until we get desirable results. So once you have a result that you really love, you can download it and you can even upscale this. Something that's very important while prompting is you can mention things like ensure that there's a warm lighting that's coming from the left and a subtle blue light from the right so that it matches the sort of lighting that we achieve. This is what it gives a very realistic sort of lighting, as you can see right here. Once we have the perfect image, we will simply just download it. You might need to reprompt it a little bit here and there. And once you're satisfied with the results, we can upscale this image. This step is totally optional, up to you, but to ensure that it works really well on larger screens, you can use Crystal AI's upscaler. So you can visit replicate.com and use it. It's even available in other AI studio like fal.ai. So we will upload this photo and we will use a scale of 2 and run it. There's this one thing about AI workflows. The sequence of operations that you do really dictates the final results. As you can see, there is quite a significant difference, and haven't seen any upscaler that works as good at this. We don't really care about the subtle details that it could not nail with our face because we are just gonna use the background from here. So this step is optional again. So we'll download this image and then we will go back to nanobanana and we will upload this image, click unlimited. Now this step will again take a few iterations, and once you have a background image, you can even generate more versions of this using Flux Context Model. For example, I've used this image and give it a prompt to change things a little bit. For example, the light is in here, and I tried some other moody lighting scenes. For example, the light is now on the left and it looks much more pleasing to the eye. So yeah, it takes a while, and I think this also looks pretty good. Again, I will give you all the prompts in the description down below. Once we have the background extracted, we can get back to DaVinci again. So once we're done with this step, we don't need the solid color anymore and we can simply import our freshly generated background. But as you can see, the edges are not perfect and we might need to scale this a little bit. I will hold control and scale it a little bit and probably pull the even move the scene a little bit. So this is the complete tutorial how we get the AVTP kind of look. And even if we zoom into this, this is quite good. Like if you look at the edges, it's perfect. And you will see that this lighting is also, the scene is also lit very well. You can make it look even better by adding a little bit of vignette on the edges, but I'm out of time for this tutorial.
Now I gave you the full tutorial, literally everything, no gatekeeping, no missing steps. And I get it, the reason AVTV actually uses such an expensive setup is to save time, because in that setup there's absolutely no need for heavy post-production. You just hit record and you're good to go. And I kind of get it, nothing is as important as speed in 2026. If this video helped, hit subscribe because I break down editing stuff every week. And if you want to know how we make viral 3D AIB rolls, watch this video next.